This is a direct violation, as outlined right here. You will remove these markers immediately, or the association will begin assessing daily fines.
The first thing I saw was blue lights bouncing off my living room wall at 4:27 a.m., and the second thing I heard was a deputy's knuckles rapping my door like I owed him money. Cold air rushed in when I cracked it open, and my porch boards were slick from overnight rain. The deputy's flashlight cut across my doormat, my package box, and the little potted plant I forgot to bring in. He looked tired, like this wasn't his first weird call before sunrise. He said, "We got a trespass complaint. Says you blocked access to an easement." Then he nodded toward my own front steps like they were a crime scene, and I smelled wet wood and stale coffee from his cup. By 9:00 a.m., I was holding a bright orange HOA violation letter like it was radioactive. I finally understood what this fight was about when I read the subject line, "Karen trespassed my porch over this easement. Turns out I'm the surveyor with the Bodycam video on file." I wish that was a joke. It wasn't. The board rep had written that my porch was obstructing a shared pathway and I needed to remove encroachments within 10 days or pay a fine. Here's the simple truth: it's deeded to my lot. Not shared. My porch has been there since before the HOA even printed its first newsletter, and the only pathway is the one this woman invented in her head. I tried to be normal about it. I emailed the chair, then I called, then I showed up at the clubhouse office with my deed in my hand. The chair didn't look up from her laptop. She just slid a clipboard toward me like I was checking in at a dentist. I said, "This is my porch. There is no public access through my front steps." She smiled the kind of smile people use on toddlers and said, "The board has already decided." Outside, two neighbors were watering plants and suddenly found the sky very interesting. One literally turned his back like I was contagious. It felt like everyone had learned the new rule: don't make eye contact when the HOA is hunting. The woman in the robe, the one who started this, lived 3 doors down and acted like she owned the street. She'd strutted up my steps the day before, tapping my rail like a landlord, telling me the easement gave her the right to pass through. I told her, calmly, "No. This is my porch." She did that little laugh people do when they're wrong but refuse to admit it. Then she snapped a photo of my house number like she was collecting evidence for a documentary. I stood there with my keys in my hand, feeling my face get hot, and I made myself a promise: I'm not doing anything stupid. Proper channels only. I was going to win this with paper, not fists. So I went where paper lives. On May 3, 2024, I drove to the county records office right after lunch, the kind of building that smells like old carpet and toner. The clerk window had a little bell and a sign that said, "Please have your parcel number ready." I slid mine under the glass, along with a polite smile that took effort. The clerk disappeared, and when she came back she dropped a stamped file on the counter with a thud that made 2 people look over. She said, "Here you go." The file landed with 73 pages, and the top one was the recorded plat map, crisp and undeniable. I stared at the thick stack like it was a weapon that didn't need sharpening. Back home, I built my case like I was assembling a model airplane, slow and careful. I lined up photos, emails, and call logs in a binder. I printed the violation letter, the deputy's incident number, and the HOA's follow-up friendly reminder that somehow demanded $200 by Friday. I also pulled my own work footage, because I don't just dabble in property lines. I'm a licensed surveyor, and on jobs I wear a small body cam for documentation. It catches everything: stakes, measurements, conversations, and people who think boundaries are optional. I didn't plan to use it against a neighbor. But I also didn't plan to be accused of trespassing on my own porch. Timeline item 1 April 5 at 4:27 a.m. False trespass call. That was the moment I stopped thinking this was a misunderstanding and started treating it like a pattern. Over the next 3 weeks, there were 3 more complaints, all anonymous, all oddly detailed, all pointing toward my front steps. Someone said I blocked emergency access. Someone said I threatened residents. Someone said I put nails in the walkway, which would have been impressive since there is no walkway. I kept my voice calm on every call, and I wrote down every date. I also saved every reply from the board, because they all had the same chilly tone, like they were reading from a script. The HOA announced a special compliance meeting for May 14, 2024 at 6:30 p.m., and the room was packed like it was free pizza night. The chair sat at a folding table with a little nameplate, and the board rep leaned back with her arms crossed like she was guarding a throne. The woman in the robe showed up in bright white sneakers and a smug grin, waving at people like she was running for mayor. I waited my turn, then stood up with my binder and a rolled-up plat map. I said, "I'm here to clear up the easement question." The chair said, "Make it quick." So I did. I held up the recorded plat and pointed to the actual utility easement, which ran along the side yard, not through my porch. Then I played the Bodycam clip on my phone and turned up the volume. You could hear the woman in the robe on my steps saying, "The easement lets me come through here," and you could see her foot cross onto my porch, her hand tug my rail, and her other hand nudge a small wooden stake I had placed for a different job. She didn't just trespass. She tampered. The room made this soft sound, like a collective inhale. Her grin vanished so fast it looked like someone turned off a light. That's when the neighborhood shifted from scared to curious. Phones lifted like sunflowers. A guy in the back whispered, "Oh my God, he has video." Someone else muttered, "She really called the cops at 4 in the morning?" A woman near the door said, "I knew it. I knew it was her." The group chat started buzzing so loud it sounded like angry bees in pockets. I caught bits of messages over shoulders, "This is insane. Did you see her touch the stake? HOA is gonna get sued." Another neighbor, normally silent, said out loud, "I got a letter too. 2 letters. And I'm done." Even the chair stopped tapping her pen. The woman in the robe sat stiff, blinking hard, like she was trying to wake up from a bad dream. The best part was I didn't even have to be dramatic, because an actual county inspector was already there. Turns out, when you file enough complaints, someone higher up starts asking why. The inspector stood, introduced himself, and asked the board for their documentation of a shared access easement through my porch. The board rep fumbled a folder and produced nothing. The inspector pointed at the recorded plat and said the easement was for utilities, not foot traffic. He also noted that moving or disturbing survey markers can violate county code, and that my footage clearly showed interference. Then he said a line that made the room go silent again: "Patterns of false reports can be prosecuted." The deputy who had come to my door had written a note in the incident log, and now that note was sitting on the table like a heavy brick. Right after that, you could feel the spell break. People sat straighter, like they'd been slouching for months under a low ceiling and someone finally raised it. The chair's voice lost its sharp edge, and she started sounding like a person who suddenly remembered she could be held responsible. Neighbors who used to stare at their shoes were looking right at the board now, wide-eyed, recording openly, not even trying to hide it. Every time the woman in the robe shifted in her seat, a few phones tracked her like she was the main character in a cautionary tale. She tried to laugh once, but it came out thin and lonely, like a cough. Her usual power was oxygen, attention, and fear. In that room, all 3 ran out. Nobody backed her up. Nobody offered a rescue joke. The silence around her was loud. The aftermath didn't explode. It deflated, slow and satisfying. The inspector issued a written notice to the HOA to correct their enforcement actions, and the board had to void my violation and refund the fine they tried to push through. A week later, I got an email confirming the HOA would cover my filing costs, which came out to $500 in administrative reimbursement, written like they were doing me a favor. The deputy also delivered a formal warning to the woman in the robe about entering my property again, and she stopped walking her dog past my steps like it was her personal runway. The chair resigned before the next monthly meeting, and suddenly the board emails got shorter and less bossy, like someone had turned down the volume. And then came the real change, the quiet one you notice in small moments. People started talking again. Not gossiping. Talking. A neighbor who used to dodge me waved and asked how my week was going, like we lived in the same place again. Another neighbor told me she'd saved every HOA letter she ever got, just in case, and she said it like she was proud, not scared. The group chat shifted from panic to receipts, with screenshots and dates and calm questions. The bully lost oxygen because nobody fed the drama anymore. Folks documented everything now, not out of paranoia, but out of confidence. Even the kids riding bikes seemed louder, like the street belonged to everyone instead of one loud voice with a clipboard. The porch felt like a porch again, not a battlefield. On June 1, 2024, at 9:00 a.m., I taped a copy of the stamped plat map inside my front window, right above the welcome mat, like a quiet little read me for anyone feeling bold. I also framed the refund email because it made me laugh every time I walked by. Sometimes, when I step onto my porch, I still remember the blue lights at 4:27 a.m., and I feel that old anger flicker. Then I look at the paper, the dates, the neat lines on the map, and I breathe. It's funny how fast rules collapse when real records show up and everybody's watching. If you enjoyed this, hit like, subscribe, and share. Was the HOA wrong? Drop a comment.